Welcome to the Resilient Schools podcast. I am Jethro Jones, your host, and excited to have Lauren Jewett on the program today. Lauren is a proud product of a K-12 public education. She holds a BA in History and Political Science with a minor in American Sign Language from the University of Rochester, and is currently pursuing an MA in English from the Middlebury College Bread Loaf School of English, where she is an involved member of the Bread Loaf Teacher Network. She's an avid runner and yoga enthusiast. Now, you got to tell us what the Bread Loaf Teacher Network is. I've never heard of that before.
The Bread Loaf Teacher Network is through the Bread Loaf School of English, which is part of Middlebury College, and it has been around, I don't remember how long it's been around. I mean, it's probably, maybe 20 or 30 years, but it's comprised of a lot of teachers, many public school teachers, but anybody can join. But it's of the teachers that attend that school, the graduate students. And so we do different activities and projects with our students.
Cool. Okay, good to know. So Lauren has also been a teacher for 14 years, and she is currently a special education teacher and case manager at KIPP Memorial Primary in New Orleans, Louisiana. She's national board certified teacher in the area of exceptional needs. And today we're going to talk about some things around staff mindset and how to work with kids and provide supports for kids with disabilities, whether they've been identified or not. So, Lauren, what really stood out to you from our interview today that made you think somebody should listen to it?
I think people should listen to this episode because I think right now a lot of our students and educators have experienced trauma, and it's very important to think about our mindsets moving forward, especially while we're still navigating aspects of our pandemic.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think this was a great interview, and I think one of the other things that I really liked from it was you gave some good ideas about a challenging question, which is how do you talk to a teacher about maybe her environment is making it more challenging for the student, and what some things are that you can look for to help make that more successful. So I'm excited for this interview, and I hope everybody else is too, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. Here we go. So, Lauren, we're talking about staff mindset as it relates to trauma. And this is one of those things that if you know about trauma and you know what it does, then it's a lot easier to have a better mindset around it. But it's also really challenging if you don't know what it's all about to deal with it. So, what would you say is most important when it comes to the staff mindset around trauma?
So I always think about first, what can I control as a classroom teacher or an educator? What we can control is creating environments in our schools and in our classrooms that really feel emotionally and physically safe for our students and for our fellow colleagues and staff. And, we can control, our language, and we can control our comments, and we often can control, our actions. And I think that all starts with mindsets. I think our mindsets can really help make sure that we're fostering a positive learning environment, and a positive environment for teaching. And, mindset around trauma, and thinking about that it's lifelong work. It's really reflective work. It's metacognitive work. It's really not a program. It's not curriculum. It's not a mandate. You have to constantly be reflecting on different interactions that you have with students and maybe with your colleagues. So that's how I think about, mindsets when it comes to trauma.
Yeah. So what's something that you could say is like a mantra or a slogan or a thing to remind yourself of to keep yourself in a good mindset here?
I am a big advocate for students, but I'm also a big advocate for teachers. And so I often try to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as adults, because if we're not, well, then how can we really help promote the wellness for our students? So just making sure that we're taking care of ourselves as educators so that we can take care of the students.
I appreciate that. I think that's so important. One of the other things that I would say is that a mantra I think that helps is every day is a new day, or you start fresh every day, or something like that, because that really underscores the idea that even for you as the teacher or for the students, that it's a new day. That if I messed up yesterday, or if you messed up yesterday, then we can start fresh again today. How does that kind of a mindset or a mantra help a teacher who may be struggling with some very real issues in her classroom?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about a recent situation that I had experienced with a student. They had a tough day, and we worked through that, and then literally the next day the student came back and was able to um, you know get back on track, and I think that it helped that I kind of reflected on the situation, and that there was some time and space away from the situation, and then we had a great day. And so knowing that we are humans, and humans uh you know deal with stress and deal with trauma. It's not something that we can definitely avoid. I mean, stress is always going to be there. Is how do we handle it? Like I said, what can we control, and what kind of strategies can we use to help regulate ourselves? And so I think it's really important to just help reset, like you said, every day is a new day, reset, um, and and not just continue to like harp on the past. Obviously, the past is important, and it informs how we like deal with our everyday. But know that like we can always be doing better through the interactions that we have. And so, I just try to make sure that I'm affirming and validating the kids around me, and that they know that there's going to be that I'm going to be consistent with, if there's a situation that they're going to come back, and that I'm still going to, give them a smile, give them a high five, help meet their needs. Because oftentimes we know with trauma, it stems from sometimes needs not being met. And so how can we just reset, like you said, and make sure that we are meeting the needs versus just like thinking about the situation where the needs were being unmet in that moment.
Yeah, and you, as a special education teacher, see things differently than maybe some other people would see. So, talk to us a little bit about what are some of the things that could be special education related that are showing up as trauma, or could be trauma that are showing up as things that you might think the student needs to be referred to special ed.
I work with elementary age kids, so they're still pretty young, and haven't had a ton of years in school. But what can often be, just a trauma in itself is just um, feeling um, like there's a self-esteem issue around learning something, that like I can't do the work, or I'm not able to do and catch on with the learning as fast as the peers. So there comes to be a time, especially with the age range that I work with, which is 8, 9, 10 years old, upper elementary, where kids start to see they start to maybe other themselves a little bit, because they notice that they're maybe not grasping the concepts as quickly. There's this comparison factor, and especially as kids want to do, impress their peers. So I think that what I notice, at least maybe some specific trauma around just like the self-efficacy around learning, and how do you view yourself as a learner, and an individual in a building that's centered on education and learning. So I think that um, can sometimes be something that a kid can possibly internalize about themselves. And so I noticed that a lot. I noticed that with students that either aren't identified, or students that I have worked with over the years, that it's really important to build up um, the self-esteem, build up the self-efficacy as a learner. We work a lot in, you know, with the students on how can they affirm themselves, and say positive things about themselves. I often do a little exercise with students prior to IEP meetings, and one of the questions that I ask students is what their strengths are, what they're good at, and how they would describe themselves. Just asking them to give some adjectives that would describe themselves, and that is often a question that sometimes stumps a lot of kids. They're not, you know, practicing that enough to like know, I mean, what they're really strong at. And so that's something that like, as educators, I try to emphasize is that students know that yes, there may be things that they are having trouble with, either academically or emotionally or behaviorally, but it seems like a lot of times it's like this focus on like what they can't do, versus like all the great things and assets that they bring to the classroom, and bring to a school setting. So working with kids to help them know that, hey, we're all working on stuff. And I help to try to like tell them that too. Like I'm an adult, but I'm still working on some of these like things that I have trouble with. But these are all the things that I'm really good at. And so trying to kind of help them see that we're all kind of works in progress, and that none of us is perfect. Because I think that there's this like sometimes emphasis on like everything has to be perfect. We have to be perfect, and kind of trying to get away from that and just focus on holistically, what am I strong at, and what things can I still, improve on.
Yeah. So when we go back to the idea of a staff mindset, how do you help the staff see students as their strengths first and not their deficits first?
Yeah, this is something I feel like often comes up, especially in my role as a special ed teacher. It is when we work with students that do have disabilities. The kids, you know, sometimes I think with conversations, it can be like a this idea of like labeling a kid, or like kind of going in a like this medical, like pathological kind of like model of like the designation, the diagnosis, like and we know that kids can have needs, and all kids have needs. They don't need that diagnosis to have the help that's necessary. Obviously, we know kids that have IEPs and legal documentation, like they definitely have those rights, but like, kind of reframing this idea of like, you have to have, the diagnosis or the designation just to like have the support need. So I try to kind of like help staff members think about it that way, and also that even when we get like a diagnosis or like maybe a descriptor on what a kid is you know qualifying under for an exceptionality or disability, like that doesn't really tell us all the time about like what kind of skills that we need to help address with the student. I have looked at the work of Ross Greene, and he talks a lot about lagging skills, and like, we talk about what kind of skills can we focus on versus like, okay, the giving the designation isn't necessarily going to tell us everything. We need to like really know what the needs of that specific kid is, and just be, yeah, like I said, being aware of that difference, between just like defining and diagnosing a kid, versus like what can we observe about that student. There's more of a that's sometimes it's like there's a little discomfort there because it's a little bit more ambiguous, but like we're looking at like that specific kid because every kid is different, every brain is different. And I try to often tell staff members, and collaborate with them to understand like, well, how is the environment in your classroom, or how is the curriculum or the materials that we're using, how is that more disabling than like that, like what's wrong with that, versus like looking at the student as something to be fixed, and that like the student is something's wrong with the student, right? We need to make sure we're like thinking about what can we shift and like adapt to help the student, which can be the environment, which can be the curriculum and the tools that we provide the student. Like the student doesn't have to be fixed; they're fine. Like we're trying to provide different things to help them access and grow.
Can you give an example of what a disabling environment would look like, or how you would talk to a teacher about that? Because that seems like, let me just put this out there. It seems like, so you're saying that they're not doing well in my class and it's all my fault? Well, they have a disability. I can hear that coming back from the teacher, and that's not what you're saying, but can you talk about what that could look like?
And I have worked with teachers, mentored or coached them, and I'm a teacher myself. And of course, there's so many things that teachers have to do all day, every day, more so than most people know. So I think, definitely coming at it from a place of like understanding, listening, like to understand what their set, what the teacher's setup of the classroom is. Why did they make certain choices? Are those choices reflective of the student's needs? So yeah, an example, I mean, could just basically be um, how are materials, situated in the classroom so that, are they labeled? Are there anchor charts or things that help guide a student? And I'm thinking definitely at the beginning of the school year too, to like help know, certain routines. Are the materials in the classroom easy to find and navigate? And are there not just words there? Are there visuals there for students that may not, that may still be learning literacy and print skills? And then are those materials in the classroom, or those posters in the classroom, are they accessible linguistically for many of our students? So just thinking about like things like little switches like that that can go a long way. And yes, that takes time, but it also is like showing a student like, hey, this teacher took time to think through those things to help me feel safe in the classroom, to help me be successful. And then also just like, how the classroom is designed, in terms of seating. Are there different aspects of seating, if that's available? I know not every school has, lots of flexible seating, but I know teachers write a lot of grants, or they try to like be resourceful to get those things for what students might need to feel, that they can, like again, feel comfortable in that classroom.
Yeah, I think those are all really good examples. I appreciate you being part of this podcast. Thanks so much for being here, Lauren. If people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
I am on Twitter at Jewett87. And I am also on Instagram at the same handle. And those are the places where people can interact with me. And I definitely welcome conversation. Education is my passion, and I've been doing this for over 13 years.
Hey, maybe the most unique, awesome Twitter handle we've had. Do it Jewett with 2 T's at the end of Jewett. Thanks so much. Do it Jewett 87 with 2 T's at the end of Jewett. Thanks so much, Lauren, for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.